Chapter 1. The Bell That Wakes the Soul. There is a moment, invisible to the eye, that arrives before the dawn. Before the sun slices through the horizon. Before the noise of the world resumes its restless hum. It's a moment that belongs to no clock and answers to no calendar. And yet, it is the most important second of your life. Because in that stillness, you decide who you are. Not the world. Not your past. Not your circumstance. Not the one you were forced to be last week. Not the mask you wore to be accepted. Not the voice that was silenced when you should have spoken. This moment, this breath, this new beginning, it belongs to the unrelenting truth of who you could become. So stand up from the ashes of yesterday's fatigue, because this is the bell that wakes the soul. Not for the weak. Not for the familiar. Not for the half-hearted. This is for the few who dare to start again, while the rest sleep in the safety of their excuses. Because this life, it doesn't ask who you were. It demands who you're becoming. And every week, every Monday, every single morning you draw breath, you are being asked, what will you do with this fire? The greatest men in history were not born in light. They forged it. Steel under pressure. Stone under time. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times not because he was unlucky, but because he refused to hand over the pen that wrote his story. He lit the world not with genius, but with sheer defiance of darkness. And now you, standing in the cold shadow of a new week, must ask yourself, will I shrink? Will I drift? Will I bow to the noise, the doubt, the weight? Will I rise, uninvited, unwelcome, and unbreakable? This is not about motivation. That's for the masses. That's for those who need to be convinced to rise. You don't need to be convinced. You need to remember. Remember who you are when no one's looking. Remember the dream you buried beneath comfort. Remember the vow you once made to yourself, the one that echoed in your chest like a war drum. There is a version of you that's waiting, not in the future, not in some fantasy, but inside you, strangled by indecision, tied down by the habits of the old week. And that version of you? It doesn't want permission. It wants conviction. It wants the fire. We were not born to watch. We were born to move mountains. Look at Lincoln, beaten by failure, haunted by depression, dismissed by power. And yet he rose, not because of circumstance but because of character. Look at Carnegie, an immigrant child working in a cotton factory for $1.20 a week. No name. No safety net. No certainty. Only a vision larger than what the world said he was allowed to dream. Look at Ford, laughed out of every boardroom because he believed the automobile could be more than a toy for the rich. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing possibility. This is the lineage you were born from. Not royalty. Not ease. But those who stared at the impossible and refused to blink. You see, the weak doesn't care if you're ready. It arrives, like a storm, indifferent and unmerciful. But storms are not to be feared. They are proving grounds. The disciplined thrive in the storm. The purposeful command the chaos. And those who understand this one truth, they walk into Monday with a sword between their teeth. That discomfort is the gatekeeper of destiny. You don't get clarity by waiting. You get clarity by moving. You get belief by failing. You get power by choosing. Every morning you delay, every hour you second-guess, you teach your soul that hesitation is acceptable. But it is not. Hesitation is betrayal. And you were not born to betray yourself. So let the world sleep. Let the doubters doubt. Let the fearful cling to comfort. While they whisper, not yet, you scream now. While they look for guarantees, you step forward in faith. Because faith, that ancient, burning, unshakable force, is not about religion. It is about identity. Faith is choosing who you are before the world sees it. It's the architect drawing the cathedral before the stone is laid. It's Walt Disney staring at a swamp in Florida and seeing a kingdom. It's the quiet roar in your chest when logic says quit, but your heart replies, not today. Not ever. This is how you begin. Not with goals. Not with affirmations. But with war. War against everything inside you that seeks the easy path. War against the voice that says, maybe next time. War against the belief that who you've been is all you'll ever be. You declare war, not on the world, but on every excuse you've ever made. And when the war begins, you do not negotiate with weakness. You bury it. You bury it under action. You bury it under commitment. You bury it under the weight of relentless discipline. Because freedom is not given. Freedom is earned through sweat, through blood, through the kind of choices that no one will see, but everyone will feel. And so, as the world turns over in sleep, you stand. Not to prove anything, not to be liked, but because you know, on the other side of resistance is the version of you that was born to lead. And leadership begins with how you lead yourself. Every week, every day, every hour you show up, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because the man who only shows up when it's easy is owned by his moods. But the one who shows up regardless? He is unchainable. So begin here. Not with fear, not with doubt, but with decision. The decision to walk into this week like it was your last. To speak like your voice will echo beyond time. To work like the world depends on it, because your world does. Start the week with stillness. Then let the stillness ignite movement. Let the movement ignite clarity. Let the clarity ignite vision. Let the vision ignite action. And let the action ignite transformation. Because if you do not burn for something, you will be buried by everything. And the world does not need more people buried. It needs more people on fire. This is the spark. This is the unspoken oath. This is how you begin every week. With rage for excellence. With humility before the process. With eyes like a hawk and heart like a furnace. This is not just another Monday. This is your arena. And your opponent is not time. Your opponent is the part of you that still doesn't believe. So silence him. And rise. The week is watching. And the bell has already rung. Chapter 2. Mindset, the arena of the unseen. Before you build anything in this world, before you chase the goal, write the code, lift the weight, speak the word, or take the leap, you must first step into the most important battlefield that will ever exist. The battlefield of your own mind. Everything begins there. Everything dies there. Because your mind is not a passive thing. It's not a container for thoughts. It is the shaper of reality. It doesn't just reflect your life. It creates it, moment by moment, silently, invisibly, ferociously. And here's what they won't tell you. Most people are already conquered before they even begin. Not by the economy. Not by politics. Not by the competition. But by the small, persistent voice within that whispers, "You are not enough." But let me ask you, who taught you that voice belonged to you? Who taught you to believe every thought you have is truth? You were born with fire. Look at a child, bold, unfiltered, relentless. They try. They fall. They try again. They don't care about judgment. They don't fear failure. That fear, that constant second-guessing, it's something you learned. From parents who were scared. From teachers who didn't see you. From peers who projected their own insecurities onto your dreams. From a culture that worships conformity and punishes boldness with ridicule. So now, at the start of a new week, you must reclaim your mind from the hands of the world that shaped it without your consent. You must unlearn what they gave you. You must rebuild your mental architecture, brick by brick, thought by thought, until the foundation beneath you is made of iron, not sand. Understand this. Every single action you take is preceded by a thought. That thought is either your ally or your executioner. And the mind, if undirected, is like a wild horse, powerful, beautiful, dangerous, and utterly uncontrollable. It will run in circles, chase shadows, believe lies, and retreat at the first sight of resistance unless you learn how to command it. And command does not mean suppression. It means ownership. It means you look your thoughts in the eye and say, "You serve me now." Not the other way around. When you wake up tired, when the weight of the past week still clings to your back like a chain, when you feel uninspired, disconnected, uncertain, that is the moment when you must step back into the arena of the unseen and take control of the narrative playing behind your eyes. You do not wait for energy. You generate it. You do not wait for motivation. You create momentum. You do not wait for clarity. You move into the fog until it clears. That is the mindset of warriors. That is the mindset of creators, builders, revolutionaries, kings, and queens who understood that the external world can be chaotic, but the internal world must be a kingdom where only one voice reigns. Your voice. There's a reason the greatest empires in history, Rome, Egypt, Babylon, rose and fell not on the strength of their armies, but on the mindset of their leaders. When Rome believed it was invincible, it became unstoppable. When Rome began to fear loss more than it desired greatness, it began to rot from the inside. This is how the human soul decays, quietly, through the erosion of belief, through the slow poisoning of doubt that goes unchallenged. You don't fall because you're weak. You fall because you stopped protecting the gate. And the gate is your mind. So this week, build a fortress. Not a wall that keeps you from risk or change, but a fortress of intention, of presence, of unshakable clarity. Remind yourself daily, I am not my thoughts, I am the thinker of thoughts. I am not my fears, I am the one who decides which fears to face. I am not my circumstances, I am the author of my response. The men and women who changed the world didn't start with perfect conditions. They started with an iron belief in what they could not yet see. Steve Jobs didn't have the blueprint. He had the belief that simplicity could be revolutionary. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't have permission. He had the belief that dignity and justice were not optional, but inevitable. Amelia Earhart didn't have precedent. She had the belief that boundaries were meant to be broken. And so must you begin. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because to walk into this week with the mindset of your old self is to drag a corpse behind you and wonder why you feel tired. You must shed the skin. You must let go of the identity that no longer fits the future you're building. You must refuse to think like someone who's waiting for life to happen to them. Because the truth is brutal and beautiful all at once. No one is coming to save you. And that's exactly what makes this so powerful. You are the hero. You are the rescuer. You are the storm and the calm. So you start each week not by checking your to-do list, but by checking your mind. Is it clear? Is it focused? Is it owned by you, or is it still a puppet pulled by the strings of someone else's doubts, someone else's limits, someone else's fears? This is your mind. And a free mind is the foundation of a powerful life. Let the others begin with schedules. Let the others begin with tactics and apps and biohacks. You begin with mastery. You begin with who you are before anything is done. You begin with the unwavering, unshakable belief that this week will bend to your will, not because it owes you anything, but because you will demand more of yourself than the week will ever demand of you. And that is what separates the remembered from the forgotten, the bold from the broken, the king from the common. It is not birth. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is mindset, the quiet, constant, uncompromising decision to hold your inner world to a standard higher than anything outside of you. And the world, eventually, will reflect that standard. This is where we begin. This is where you begin. Now go. The mind is ready. The rest of you will follow. Chapter 3. Belief, the first law of becoming. There is something no school teaches, no textbook explains, and no degree certifies, yet it is the single most critical force that drives the arc of every life ever lived. Belief. Not belief in the abstract, not belief in fairy tales or convenient hopes, but belief as a law of becoming. What you believe about yourself determines what you will allow, what you will tolerate, what you will attempt, and most importantly, what you will refuse to live without. Every person you've ever admired, every individual who changed history, every soul who made something timeless out of dust, before they acted, before they succeeded, before they were celebrated, they believed. They believed not because it was rational or supported by evidence, but because the alternative, living a life of quiet compliance and spiritual starvation, was unacceptable. And that's where most people are broken, not by their circumstances, not by some external force, but by the fact that they never question the beliefs they carry. Beliefs that were planted in them when they were too young to defend themselves. Beliefs formed by hurt, by rejection, by failure, by the careless words of others. And those beliefs harden like concrete. You hear it in their language. I'm just not good at that. That's just how I am. It's probably too late. I've never been lucky. It's always been hard for me. These are not reflections of truth. These are declarations of belief, repeated so many times they've become a self-fulfilling prophecy. What people fail to understand is that belief is not a mirror. Belief is a blueprint. You don't believe something because it's real. It becomes real because you believe it. When Henry Ford said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right," he wasn't being poetic. He was describing how reality obeys the architecture of your internal conviction. Ford wasn't born a genius. He worked as a machinist. He built cars in a shed. He was told again and again that mass production was impossible, that the assembly line would never scale, that regular people wouldn't own cars. But Ford believed not just in a machine, but in the world he saw inside his mind. And that belief reshaped civilization. Now here's the truth most people will never hear in time. The difference between a life that expands and a life that shrinks isn't talent. It isn't money. It isn't even opportunity. It's the story you believe about what is possible for you. And until you rewrite that story, every goal you chase will be sabotaged by an identity that hasn't been updated. You cannot outwork disbelief. You cannot hustle your way around a weak self-image. You cannot build a future while dragging around the invisible weight of, "I'm not enough." This is why you must interrogate your beliefs like a detective at a crime scene. Every doubt, every fear, every mental limit, ask it, who put you here? When did I agree to carry you? What would my life look like if you weren't real? And you'll begin to see that most of what holds you back doesn't come from reality. It comes from a memory, from a moment, from a version of you that no longer exists, but whose voice still echoes inside your skull like an ancient ghost. You have to decide, finally and completely, to stop letting that voice narrate your story. You have to reclaim authorship. And authorship begins with bold belief, not vague, soft, easy hope, but belief that is tested in the fire of resistance and still refuses to fold. Because when you believe in something with enough intensity, the world is forced to rearrange around it. Opportunities begin to appear not because they weren't there before, but because your eyes were too clouded by doubt to see them. People begin to respond to you differently, not because they changed, but because you did. The tone in your voice, the clarity in your eyes, the certainty in your presence, it all shifts when your belief is no longer conditional. This is the truth that drove every visionary who ever changed the course of history. Walt Disney was told by bankers and city officials and even his own team that his ideas were too big, too expensive, too unrealistic. He had no formal training. He lost his first company. He was rejected by over 300 investors for Disneyland. But he believed in a world that didn't yet exist. And because he believed in it, millions of people now visit a place that was once just a sketch on his desk. So if your life feels small, if your progress feels slow, if your days feel like repetition without growth, do not look first to your schedule, your environment, or your discipline. Look to your beliefs. What have you allowed yourself to believe about who you are, about what you deserve, about what you're allowed to build? Because whatever that is, you will never rise above it. You will build to the ceiling of your belief, and then you will stop, until you realize that there is no ceiling. There never was. There is only the limit you were willing to accept. And when you stop accepting it, everything changes. This is how revolution begins. Quietly. Internally. With a moment of decision where you stop asking, "Can I?" and begin declaring, "I will." Not because it's certain. Not because you feel ready, but because belief is what makes you ready. Every step forward after that is fueled not by proof, but by vision. This is the new law of your life. Believe it before you see it, and you will see it because you believed it. From this moment on, let that law guide you. Not wishful thinking, not blind optimism, but disciplined, unrelenting belief forged in the fires of clarity and backed by consistent action. Because belief alone is not enough. But without it, nothing else will ever be. Chapter 4. Clarity, the compass within the storm. You can have energy, you can have ambition, you can even have belief burning through your chest like wildfire, but if you lack clarity, you will wander. And the world is full of wanderers who mistake motion for progress, who mistake busyness for direction, who mistake fatigue for fulfillment. The truth is, the modern mind is overloaded, overstimulated, overscheduled, yet underaligned. We live in a time where information is infinite, but inner stillness is rare. And when the mind is noisy, clarity becomes impossible. Clarity is not a list. It's not a planner. It's not a vision board glued together with hopes and aesthetics. Clarity is the decision to know who you are, what you want, and most importantly, what you are willing to suffer for. Because everything of value, every goal, every breakthrough, every legacy, requires struggle. It requires sacrifice. And unless you are painfully specific about what matters most to you, you will bleed for things that don't. You will chase approval. You will say yes to distractions. You will give your best hours to the wrong priorities. And in the end, you'll call it failure, when in truth, it was simply misalignment. Most people think they lack motivation. But what they really lack is clarity. Clarity of intention. Clarity of direction. Clarity of standards. It's not that they don't want to grow, it's that they're pulling themselves in 5 different directions at once and then wondering why they're exhausted. You cannot move with force if you don't move with focus. You cannot harness your willpower if your identity is divided. And you cannot build anything of substance if you keep changing the blueprint halfway through construction. Clarity doesn't just mean knowing what you want. It means knowing what you will no longer tolerate. It means drawing a hard line between your old self and the future self you're building. It means looking at every behavior, every habit, every relationship and asking, does this pull me forward, or does this pull me backward? Not every opportunity is meant for you. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Not every voice deserves your attention. Clarity is not about having more. It's about knowing what to eliminate. When you study the most disciplined, productive, fulfilled people in the world, you'll find a common thread. They are selective. They are ruthless about protecting their energy. They say no more than they say yes. They understand that every yes is 1,000 hidden no's, and they refuse to trade depth for width. They do not chase everything. They commit to the few things that matter. And that's where the power is. Take a moment and consider this. If someone followed you around for 1 week, with no explanation and no context, could they guess what your life's mission is? Could they see it in your routine, in your language, in how you spend your time? Or would they see someone constantly reacting, constantly pulled by circumstance, constantly trying to balance too many identities at once? Because clarity is not something you stumble upon. It is something you cultivate. It is something you choose, again and again, by removing what doesn't belong. Clarity is what allows the architect to design a skyscraper instead of a shack. It's what allows a leader to inspire instead of confuse. And it's what allows you, on the deepest level, to move through your life with direction, instead of drifting with momentum. You cannot ask the world to make space for you if you have not first made space within yourself. And that space is created through intention, through the courage to stop, to reflect, to strip away the noise, and to declare, this is who I am. This is what matters. This is where I am going. There's a reason people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Steve Jobs were not constantly attending networking events or following the trend of the day. It's not because they were antisocial. It's because they understood something most people never learn. Clarity is earned in solitude. When Jobs came back to Apple in 1997, he didn't add products, he cut them. He went from a bloated catalog to a handful of precise, focused innovations. But because clarity wins. Clarity scales. Clarity builds legacy. Vagueness only builds confusion. In your own life, clarity might look like waking up earlier, not because some influencer told you to, but because that's when your mind is clearest. It might look like journaling every morning to dump the noise before you let the world in. It might look like quitting a goal that isn't yours, stepping back from a role that doesn't fit, walking away from a standard that no longer reflects your future. Clarity isn't sexy. It doesn't get applause. But it makes everything else possible. There is nothing more dangerous than a person with nothing to lose, except a person who knows exactly what they want and why they must have it. That kind of clarity turns ordinary people into forces of nature. It gives birth to empires. It shapes history. And it all begins inside, before a single thing changes outside. So as you begin this week, ask the harder questions. What are you really chasing? What are you pretending not to know? What are you doing because it's expected, not because it's aligned? If you had to choose just one thing this week to give your absolute best to, what would it be? Not 10 things. Not 5. What? Because focus is power, and clarity is what enables it. If you don't decide what matters most, the world will decide for you. And the world always chooses comfort, conformity, distraction, and delay. But clarity? Clarity chooses purpose. Clarity chooses truth. Clarity chooses legacy over popularity, impact over noise, and intention over chaos. So let the rest of the world drown in busyness. Let them chase everything. You move with precision. You speak with direction. You live with conviction. This is how empires are born. This is how greatness begins. Not in action, not in noise, but in the silence where you finally become clear. Chapter 5. Vision, the architecture of the unseen future. Before a single brick is laid, before steel rises from the earth, before any structure reaches toward the sky, there is a blueprint, a plan, a vision, not in the hands of the laborer, but in the mind of the architect. And so it is with life. If you do not first build it in the mind, it cannot stand in the world. Vision is not a dream. It is not a hope or a wish. Vision is a design. Vision is architecture in the dimension of thought, blue steel lines cutting through the fog of uncertainty, giving shape to what has never been seen before. Without vision, you wake up each day and drift. You move, you react, you respond to what happens, but you are not directing your life, you are surviving it. You are taking in input from the outside world, but you are not creating output that shapes it. Vision separates those who make history from those who merely observe it. It is the quiet force behind every revolution, every innovation, every act of greatness. And the tragedy is that so many people live with empty calendars and overfilled minds, not because they lack time, but because they have no clarity of where they're trying to go. Vision is the ability to see beyond what is into what could be. It's standing in the middle of chaos and disorder and imagining what structure would look like. It's hearing impossible and quietly answering, not yet. It is an act of rebellion in a world that teaches us to be realistic, to think small, to only pursue what can be proven. But vision isn't limited by evidence. It's not a product of the past. It is born in the boldest parts of your imagination, and it grows in the disciplined parts of your actions. When Nikola Tesla imagined wireless energy, he wasn't admired, he was mocked. When the Wright brothers stared at the sky and believed that man could fly, the world laughed. When Elon Musk said he would colonize Mars, people rolled their eyes. But vision doesn't need validation, it needs persistence. Vision is not about being right today. It's about being committed until tomorrow catches up. If you do not have a vision for your life, you will be used by someone who does. You will become an actor in someone else's story, a supporting role in someone else's mission. And one day, you'll look back and realize you built castles for other people while your own foundation was never poured. Vision isn't selfish. It's sacred. It is the mechanism by which your potential is translated into reality. But it requires space. It requires silence. It requires that you turn down the volume of the world long enough to hear your own thoughts, and then ask, what would I create if I believed nothing was off limits? This is the beginning of true leadership. Not titles, not followers, but vision. Leadership begins when someone sees something that does not yet exist and refuses to let it go, even when the world offers distraction, delay, and every reason to give up. Real vision doesn't fade when it gets hard. It sharpens. And that clarity begins to magnetize the right people, the right opportunities, the right circumstances. The world may not bend easily, but it does bend to the will of those who have made the future real in their minds first. To carry vision is to carry weight. Because once you've seen what's possible, you can't unsee it. Once you've felt the call of something greater, mediocrity becomes a form of death. That's why vision can be painful. It demands you leave the herd. It demands you walk alone at times. It demands you risk misunderstanding, criticism, and failure. But what's the alternative? To live safely, comfortably, invisibly? To move through life without ever touching your own edge? That is not living. That is slow resignation. Walt Disney stood in an orange grove in the middle of Florida and imagined an entire world. Roller coasters, music, families laughing, parades, and a sense of magic no city had ever created. He didn't see trees. He saw possibility. And because he refused to let go of that vision, despite financial ruin, despite opposition, despite endless delays, millions now walk through a world that began in one man's mind. So I ask you, what is the world that lives inside yours? What are you tolerating simply because you've stopped visiting your vision? What goals have turned into routines, what routines into ruts, and what dreams have you quietly buried under the dust of logic and adult responsibility? Because here is the hard truth, vision is not just a privilege, it is a responsibility. If you've been gifted a glimpse of what could be, it's not enough to admire it. You have to build it. You have to structure your life around it. Your sleep, your discipline, your learning, your environment, your associations, they all must become servants to that vision. Otherwise, the vision will dissolve, and you will find yourself once again wandering in a fog of wasted potential. And this doesn't mean your vision has to be grand in the eyes of others. It just has to be real. Maybe your vision is to build a family rooted in love and wisdom. Maybe it's to transform your community. Maybe it's to take your gift and use it to heal, to teach, to build, to inspire. Whatever it is yours. No one else will see it until you do. No one else will build it unless you start. So make it vivid. Make it detailed. Not someday, not eventually, but now. Put it on paper. Speak it out loud. Walk through it in your mind every single morning. Because when the vision becomes more real than the fear, that's when you begin to move with power. That's when hesitation turns to momentum and procrastination becomes impossible. Because you're not just working anymore. You're building something that matters. That's the difference between those who create legacies and those who just meet deadlines. Legacy builders move with vision. They aren't swayed by opinion. They aren't shaken by setbacks. They know exactly what they are constructing, and they understand that everything else is noise. So this week, stop looking for the map. You are the map. The clarity, the focus, the destination. It lives in your willingness to see beyond the present. Do not wait for approval. Do not wait for the conditions to be perfect. Do not wait until you feel ready. Vision is not about being ready. Vision is about being willing. Willing to carry something bigger than you. Willing to speak about it even when your voice shakes. Willing to move before you're comfortable. Because the world doesn't change when we arrive. The world changes when we begin to build what we've seen before anyone else does. And now that you see it, you know what must come next. It's time to build. Chapter 6. Purpose, the fuel that doesn't burn out. There will come a time, many times, when your energy fades, when your motivation dries up, when the high of ambition collapses under the weight of routine, pressure, exhaustion, or disappointment. In those moments, most people quit. Not because they weren't capable. Not because the path was impossible. But because they were trying to power a long journey with temporary fuel. They relied on adrenaline. They relied on hype. They relied on other people's approval. And when those things inevitably ran out, they found themselves stranded in the middle of their own story, not knowing how to go any further. That's why you don't build a life on motivation. You build it on purpose. Because purpose is the only fuel that doesn't burn out. Purpose doesn't scream. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't flood your brain with dopamine like a new idea or a compliment or a like on social media. Purpose is quiet. It is the still, unwavering sense that what you are doing, what you are becoming, matters, even when it doesn't feel good, even when no one is watching, even when no one understands. Purpose is the reason you keep showing up after the excitement dies. It's what keeps your hands moving when your heart is heavy. And without it, you will always be looking for something external to keep you going, validation, opportunity, applause, but none of those things last. Purpose does. The tragedy is that most people never take the time to find it. They chase goals without asking, why this? They mimic others' success without checking if it matches their own values. They pursue careers, relationships, lifestyles, and habits that look good on paper but leave them feeling hollow. Because without a sense of inner purpose, every win feels strangely disconnected. It looks like progress. It looks like success. But it doesn't feel like fulfillment. And so they keep going, hoping the next goal, the next paycheck, the next project will finally bring that feeling of meaning. But meaning doesn't come from more. It comes from alignment. Purpose begins the moment you stop asking what you want from life, and you start asking what life wants from you. It begins when you look at your skills, your struggles, your story, and you realize none of it was random. None of it was wasted. Every painful moment, every gift you've been given, every instinct that stirs when you hear certain words or see certain problems, that's data. That's raw material. And your job is not to ignore it. Your job is to shape it into something that matters. Think about the people who inspire you most. Not the celebrities, not the ones performing for the camera, but the ones who live with undeniable depth. The ones whose eyes hold fire, even when they're tired. The ones who can be alone for long stretches and not lose direction. The ones who don't need to convince you they're doing something meaningful, you can feel it. That's the power of purpose. It gives weight to your words. It gives gravity to your presence. It draws people to you, not because you're chasing them, but because you're anchored in something they wish they had. You see, purpose doesn't make things easier. It makes things clearer. It doesn't remove obstacles, but it gives you a reason to keep moving through them. It doesn't prevent pain, but it gives pain a place in the story. Without purpose, pain feels like punishment. With purpose, pain becomes preparation. And that shift, that internal reframe, is what allows you to stay in the game long after others have dropped out. Andrew Carnegie wasn't driven by money alone. He had more money than anyone alive, and yet he spent the last third of his life giving it away because his purpose was bigger than accumulation, it was contribution. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't stand up in front of tens of thousands and risk his life for attention. He was pulled by a vision so powerful that silence became more dangerous than resistance. Nelson Mandela didn't survive decades in prison for the sake of politics. He was fueled by a purpose that outlasted his own personal freedom. And the same thread runs through all of them, a reason so deep, so personal, so true, that no setback could stop it. The modern world is addicted to surface-level reasons. I want to be rich, I want to be admired, I want to win. And there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. But those are not purposes. They are results. They are byproducts of alignment. If you chase them without foundation, you'll find them and still feel empty. But if you find your purpose first, and structure your life around that, you will build something that can survive not just success, but suffering. You will endure the process, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. That's the defining line. Purpose gives meaning to the process, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. And here's something else. Purpose evolves. It deepens with time. You don't have to get it perfect from the start. You just have to begin looking. You have to ask better questions. You have to pay attention to what lights you up, what angers you, what breaks your heart, what brings you alive. The clues are everywhere. Purpose isn't out there waiting to be found. It's already inside you, waiting to be claimed. But that requires stillness. That requires honesty. That requires the courage to stop running from yourself long enough to hear the answer. If you're lost, start there. Don't chase goals until you've grounded yourself in something unshakable. Don't ask for more clarity, more opportunity, more time. Ask for more alignment. What part of your life feels real? What part feels hollow? Purpose doesn't need to be massive. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to be real enough that you're willing to endure discomfort to protect it. That's when you know you've found it, not when it makes you feel good, but when it makes you willing to suffer in order to keep walking. So as this week begins, don't ask yourself what you have to do. Ask yourself why it matters. Don't ask what's on your list, ask what's on your heart. And don't try to force your way forward. Instead, connect deeply to the reason that moving forward matters in the first place. Because purpose, once ignited, becomes the fuel that outlasts motivation, outlasts fatigue, outlasts failure, and even outlasts fear. And once you've found it, you become unstoppable. Chapter 7. Discipline, the bridge between desire and reality. You will never rise to the level of your goals. You will always fall to the level of your systems. That's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid because systems require discipline, and discipline has been misunderstood, mislabeled, and in many cases, vilified. It's seen as rigid, joyless, or even oppressive, when in fact, it is the only path to real freedom. Without discipline, every desire stays trapped in your imagination. Without discipline, every talent rots in potential. Without discipline, every week begins with hope and ends with regret. It doesn't matter how inspired you are if you can't make yourself follow through when you no longer feel like it. Discipline is the bridge between who you say you want to become and who you actually become. The world has trained you to chase intensity over consistency. To have bursts of effort, short-lived motivation, sprint after sprint with no strategy and no sustainability. But what builds greatness, what truly builds anything that matters, isn't what you do once in a while. It's what you do every single day, especially when no one is watching. It's what you do when you're tired, when you're bored, when you don't want to. Discipline is the quiet force behind every remarkable human achievement. It's the invisible work that compounds in silence and erupts in results months or years later. The problem is that people wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for the perfect conditions. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline shows up. It gets out of bed when the excuses start to sound logical. It opens the laptop when the body says rest. It starts the workout when the comfort of the pillow tries to seduce you back into mediocrity. Discipline doesn't negotiate. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't need permission. It just executes. Because it knows that in every small action, in every seemingly insignificant moment of effort, there is a vote being cast for the identity you are becoming. Discipline is not about forcing yourself into a prison of productivity. It's about aligning your actions with your deeper values, with your long-term vision, and with your sense of who you're meant to be. It's not punishment, it's protection. It protects your future from the whims of your present emotions. It protects your legacy from being dismantled by laziness, distraction, or inconsistency. You don't need to be extraordinary to build something extraordinary. You just need to be consistent. You just need to do the right things long enough for them to pay off. Think about athletes. The best in the world aren't the ones who train only when they feel great. They're the ones who show up every single day with intention and precision, who practice the basics until they become impossible to get wrong. Kobe Bryant didn't master his game by accident. He showed up at 4 a.m. and shot in the dark. He outworked the talent he already had. His greatness wasn't mysterious, it was methodical. His results weren't magical, they were mathematical, forged in repetition and refined through suffering. You must train your mind to value repetition over novelty. To understand that greatness is not built in moments of glory, but in the grind that no one claps for. Discipline is boring. That's why it's powerful. Because when others are looking for excitement, when others are looking for something new, you are building, brick by brick, knowing that nothing worthwhile is built quickly. Discipline is the decision to become someone you've never been by doing things you've never done. And yes, it's uncomfortable. That's the point. If it was comfortable, everyone would live extraordinary lives. But they don't. They settle. They wait. They wish. You don't get to change your life without changing your standards. And discipline is the language of high standards. It says, this is how I live now, whether I feel like it or not. This is what I tolerate. This is what I no longer tolerate. This is the version of me that I'm building, not by accident, not by luck, but by choice. And no, you won't always be perfect. You will miss days. You will have moments of weakness. But discipline is not about never slipping. It's about never staying down. It's about course correction. It's about showing up again. The disciplined person doesn't beat themselves up over every failure. They use failure as fuel. They look at what broke, they fix it, and they keep moving. Because they understand that falling down isn't the end. Quitting is. And quitting is a decision that disciplined people do not entertain. Your future is not written in your goals. It's written in your routines. It's carved into the structure of your days. You don't have to guess where someone will end up. Watch their habits. Watch how they spend their mornings. Watch how they treat their body. Watch how they talk to themselves when no one is listening. That's where the truth lives. That's where destiny is formed, in the smallest moments of discipline, repeated endlessly, until they become identity. So this week, stop trying to feel inspired. Start trying to be aligned. Start building systems that make discipline easier. Set your environment up for success. Plan your days before the chaos starts. Remove temptations. Create rituals. Eliminate friction. And most importantly, remember that discipline is a choice you make one moment at a time. Not once, not at the beginning of the week, but every hour, every action, every decision. You don't need to be stronger than the future. You just need to be stronger than the current excuse. And when you master that, when you can say no to comfort in order to say yes to growth, you become untouchable. Because nothing can stop the person who keeps showing up, no matter what. And that can be you. That must be you. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to make what you see in your mind show up in the world. That's the real magic. That's the real reward. Not the end result, but the strength you built becoming the person who could earn it. And that strength? That's discipline. And forever yours. Chapter 8. Action. The fire that transforms thought into reality. At some point, you have to stop thinking about the life you want and build it. You have to stop waiting for the right mood, the perfect time, the clearest sign, the most convenient alignment of circumstances, and move anyway. Because clarity doesn't come before action, it comes through it. Motivation doesn't precede action, it's often the result of it. And transformation isn't something that happens to you while you sit in contemplation. It's something you forge with your hands, your habits, and your relentless will, day after day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The truth is, the mind can lie to you. It can trick you into waiting, doubting, delaying, overthinking. It can flood your consciousness with fear disguised as logic, hesitation disguised as caution, perfectionism disguised as preparation. But action cuts through that noise. Action is the great equalizer, the great clarifier, the force that doesn't need permission from your past or approval from the world. It just moves. And in moving, it reshapes everything, your momentum, your confidence, your identity. We live in a culture obsessed with consumption. People endlessly scroll, watch, listen, learn, but very few actually do. And while information is valuable, while knowledge matters, there comes a point where the only thing standing between you and your next level is execution. Not another book. Not another podcast. Not another webinar. Just work. Messy, imperfect, unglamorous work. You don't need to feel like it. You don't need to be sure of the outcome. You just need to move. Because movement creates leverage. It creates direction. It creates data. You learn what works, you learn what doesn't, and in the process, you move out of imagination and into actual progress. Action doesn't require that you know the whole path. It just requires that you take the next step. That's where most people get stuck. They want certainty before they commit. But life doesn't give certainty, it gives feedback. It gives correction. It gives opportunity wrapped in ambiguity. And the only way to unwrap it is to start moving. You don't learn how to lead by reading about leadership. You learn by speaking up when you're scared. You don't learn how to be creative by studying theory. You learn by sitting down and creating, even when the result is awful. You don't learn how to be bold by reading quotes about courage. You learn by walking into rooms where you feel small and choosing not to shrink. Action is the test. It reveals whether you're serious or just interested, whether you're committed or just curious. Anyone can make a plan. Anyone can speak about ambition. But the world belongs to those who move, who show up when they're tired, who follow through when it's not exciting anymore, who understand that results are not the outcome of intensity, they're the outcome of consistency. You don't become fit from one workout. You don't build a brand from one post. You don't write a book by thinking about it. You sit down. You do the work. You get better. And you repeat. Look at the entrepreneurs, the creators, the visionaries. They weren't the smartest. They weren't the most connected. But they acted. They tried things before they were ready. They risked being wrong in front of everyone. They launched before they were confident. And they learned more in 1 month of doing than others did in years of preparing. The Wright brothers had no formal education in engineering. They were bicycle mechanics. But while others theorized about flight, they built a plane. While others debated the math, they ran experiments, adjusted, failed, adjusted again until one day, history changed. If you want to change your life, stop trying to make it perfect in your head. Start doing the thing. Start small. Start clumsy. Start before you feel ready. Because momentum doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. Action rewires your nervous system. It teaches your brain that you are someone who follows through. And once that identity locks in, it becomes easier to act again tomorrow. It becomes easier to say no to excuses, to comfort, to distraction. Because now you're no longer just someone who wants change, you're someone who's creating it. And this is the truth you have to face if you're serious about building a life that matters. No one is coming to do the work for you. You can have coaches, mentors, systems, tools, but at the end of the day, you are the one who has to hit, start, pick up the phone, write the words, lift the weight, make the decision, take the risk. You are the one who has to face your own resistance and push through it anyway. No one can do your reps. No one can make your calls. No one can write your book or give your speech or launch your product or have your difficult conversation. That burden and that power belongs to you. Action is what separates the daydreamer from the builder. And if you truly understood how short life is, how fast it moves, how little time you actually have to do something meaningful, you would stop postponing your potential. You would stop playing it safe. You would stop overthinking every possible angle and start moving in any direction that aligns with who you want to become. Because even the wrong direction will teach you more than standing still. Movement reveals more about the path than introspection ever could. So this week, stop waiting. Pick one thing you've been delaying, something meaningful, something that matters, and start. Don't worry about the scale. Don't wait until it feels big enough to be worthy. Just do the next logical step, and then do the one after that. And keep going until your identity catches up to your behavior. Because that's when everything changes, not when the world believes in you, but when you've taken so much action that you believe in you. And from there, the momentum becomes unstoppable. Not because the road is easy, but because you've proven, day after day, that you are someone who moves, someone who builds, someone who acts. And action, once mastered, becomes not just something you do, but who you are. Chapter 9. Gratitude, the power of remembering what you already have. In a world that constantly tells you that you are behind, that you need more, that you must chase something greater, earn something better, or become someone else entirely in order to be happy, it is an act of radical rebellion to stop, breathe, and truly acknowledge what you already have. Gratitude is not just a nice feeling. It is not some fluffy, feel-good exercise meant to soften you. Gratitude is power. Gratitude is precision. Gratitude is the ability to see clearly through the fog of striving and recognize that the strength you're searching for, the foundation you're trying to build, the peace you think is on the other side of achievement, it's already inside you, right now, waiting to be noticed and accessed. The problem is, we've been conditioned to tie gratitude to outcomes. To be thankful only when things go our way. To express it when we win, when we're comfortable, when we finally make it. But that's not gratitude. That's convenience. Real gratitude, the kind that transforms your life, is built in the moments when things don't look perfect, when the goal is still far away, when you're in the middle of the process and the world offers you nothing but pressure and resistance. To be grateful in those moments is not weakness, it's strength. It means you've trained your mind to see not just what's missing, but what's working. Not just what you lack, but what you carry. Because here's the truth most people miss. You cannot hate your way into a better life. You cannot constantly criticize yourself, resent the process, and focus only on what's wrong, and then expect to create something extraordinary from that state of mind. Gratitude doesn't mean settling. It doesn't mean lowering your standards or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It means choosing to see what's already true and useful, even in the middle of the climb. It means finding fuel in the small things. The way your mind keeps working when you thought you were done. The people who showed up for you when they didn't have to. The breath in your lungs that gives you another chance to make today count. Gratitude changes your posture. It keeps your heart from hardening. It keeps your eyes open. It makes you less reactive and more intentional. It reminds you that not everything needs to be fixed before something can be appreciated. And when you live with that mindset, you become dangerous. Not because you stop pushing for more, but because you're no longer pushing from emptiness. You're building from abundance. You're striving not because you feel incomplete, but because you respect the gifts you've been given too much to let them sit unused. Some of the most powerful people in history came from the most humble beginnings. They didn't rise because they hated where they came from. They rose because they appreciated the fire that shaped them. Abraham Lincoln lost more elections than he won before becoming president. His life was riddled with loss, with grief, with failure, but he carried gratitude for the opportunity to serve, to grow, to endure. Oprah Winfrey endured abuse, poverty, rejection, but she carried gratitude for the platform she eventually earned, and she used that platform to give back to others. Gratitude was not something they practiced once in a while. It was a lens they lived through. And you must do the same, especially in a culture addicted to more success, more followers, more validation. Gratitude grounds you. It reminds you that you don't need to own the whole world to feel alive. You just need to wake up, show up, and notice that even now, even here, you have enough to begin. You have experiences that others could learn from. You have pain that has made you wiser. You have moments of laughter, of insight, of resilience that cannot be taken from you. You have people, maybe a few, maybe many, who would be devastated if you gave up. You have a mind capable of learning, a body capable of action, and a soul that, if you let it, can burn through darkness with purpose. And when you can feel all of that, when you can remember that not everything of value is outside your grasp, that not every treasure lives in the future, you begin to operate from a very different place. Your energy becomes less desperate, more focused. Your confidence becomes quieter but deeper. Your progress accelerates, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're aligned. You're full. And from fullness, we build better things. This week, take the time to remember. Not just the goals. Not just the vision. But the ground beneath your feet. The wisdom you've earned. The people who've stayed. The times you've almost quit, but didn't. That matters. That counts. That's fuel. Gratitude is not about pretending you've arrived. It's about recognizing that even if you haven't, you've come far. Farther than you thought you could. And if you can see that clearly, you will not stop. You will not fail. Because a grateful mind is a resilient one. It doesn't break easily. It bends, it adapts, and it grows stronger with time. So take a breath. Not because you've earned a pause, but because you are allowed to be proud of your effort. Even now. Even if the world hasn't clapped yet. Even if the mountain is still ahead. Gratitude is not the end of the journey. It is the force that gives you strength to keep climbing. Chapter 10. Adaptability, the strength that doesn't break. You will not make it through this life intact if you are brittle. If your identity is so fixed, your plans so rigid, your definitions of success so narrow that anything unexpected becomes a threat, you will shatter the moment life does what life always does: change. Circumstances will shift, people will leave, opportunities will dissolve, economies will turn, and the world, indifferent to your expectations, will move forward with or without your cooperation. The question is not whether change will come. It's how you will respond when it does. Adaptability is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not about surrendering your power or letting go of all structure. It is the opposite. It's an act of immense power. Adaptability means you are strong enough to bend without breaking, that you can absorb the unexpected, the unwelcome, even the unjust, and instead of collapsing, you reorient. You reassess. You adjust your strategy without compromising your values. You stay committed to the destination, even when the road disappears. Too many people are deeply committed to outdated versions of themselves. They cling to old dreams, old identities, old rules about how life is supposed to go, even when every piece of feedback is telling them to evolve. They refuse to pivot not because they lack options, but because they fear the discomfort of reinvention. They confuse consistency with integrity, forgetting that integrity is not about never changing. It's about staying true to what matters, even if the form of that truth has to shift. Adaptability is not a compromise of character. It is the evolution of intelligence. It is what separates the stubborn from the strategic. Think about the most successful companies, creators, or individuals you admire, those who have endured. The reason they survived while others fell was not luck. It was adaptability. They didn't resist change, they anticipated it. They built systems that could flex, they built minds that could pivot, they trained themselves not to panic when the plan failed, because they expected it would at some point. The plan failing is not the problem, refusing to adjust is. Look at Netflix. They started by mailing DVDs in red envelopes. They could have doubled down on that model, clinging to what worked. But they saw the wave coming. They pivoted to streaming. Then they pivoted to original content. Then to global expansion. They reinvented themselves before they were forced to. That's the mark of a resilient mind, to evolve by design, not just in desperation. The same principle applies to you. Your goals will shift. Your passions may mature. What you thought you wanted 5 years ago may not align with who you are becoming. That's not failure, that's growth. And the more you resist change, the more you delay your own evolution. If you're clinging to an old version of success, of identity, of routine, just because it once worked, ask yourself, is it still aligned? Is it still working now? Because if the answer is no, the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to adapt without shame. This isn't about quitting. It's about updating the method without abandoning the mission. Your vision may be solid, but your approach must remain fluid. Your values don't change, but the way you embody them might. That's not contradiction. That's wisdom. Adaptability also means developing a deep, quiet confidence in your capacity, not your current conditions. It's understanding that you may not know what to do right now, but you will figure it out. You always have. You always will. You trust in your ability to learn, to grow, to absorb new information and turn it into action. That's the kind of trust that doesn't get shaken by setbacks, because it's not built on perfection, it's built on the practice of problem solving. Resilient people adapt, not because they enjoy chaos, but because they expect to grow through it. They don't see obstacles as interruptions, they see them as part of the process. Every curveball is information. Every failure is data. Every closed door is a redirection, not a rejection. And when you live with that level of mental flexibility, you stop being at war with reality. You stop resisting the way things are and start working with what's in front of you. That's when you move faster, smarter, stronger. This week, you will face moments that don't go according to plan. People will miscommunicate. Tasks will take longer than expected. Emotions will fluctuate. Unexpected events will throw off your schedule. You can let those moments derail you, or you can let them reveal you. Reveal your adaptability. Reveal your willingness to shift gears without spiraling. Reveal your ability to hold your vision steady while adjusting your behavior fluidly. The ones who rise aren't the ones who never face change. They're the ones who welcome it, not with blind optimism, but with steady hands and sharp awareness. They're the ones who say, "This wasn't part of the plan, but I'm still moving forward." They make new plans. They keep their mission alive while reconfiguring the steps. And here's the secret most never learn. The more you adapt, the more resilient you become. You stop fearing change because you've survived it. You stop needing predictability because you've developed agility. You stop craving control because you've built competence, the kind that doesn't need everything to go right in order to move forward. So don't worship routine. Don't worship the plan. Worship the mission, and serve it through whatever means the moment demands. That is how you endure. That is how you stay strong. That is how you win, not by holding tighter, but by learning when to let go, adjust, and pivot forward with the same fire, the same clarity, the same unwavering intention. Adaptability is not what soft people do to survive. It's what strong people do to lead. Chapter 11. Resilience, the art of getting back up, again and again. There will be moments, real moments, when it feels like everything you've done wasn't enough. When the energy runs out, the doors close, the people disappear, and the reward you were working for doesn't show up. You'll feel tired, not just physically, but existentially. You'll question whether this entire path was a mistake. You'll ask yourself if you're wasting time. You'll wonder whether maybe those who doubted you were right all along. You'll sit with thoughts you'd rather avoid, emotions that don't make sense, and the weight of silence that comes when progress doesn't arrive on your timeline. This is where most people quit, not because the goal wasn't real, not because they didn't care, but because they were never taught what resilience really is. Resilience is not just endurance. It is not blind perseverance or stubbornness for the sake of pride. Real resilience is measured not by how much you can take before you break, but by how fast you can rebuild yourself once you've been broken. It's not about never falling. It's about learning how to rise faster, stronger, and clearer every time life knocks you down. Because make no mistake, it will knock you down. It will interrupt your momentum, derail your plans, and ask you over and over again, how badly do you want this? And your answer cannot come from your mouth. It must come from your movement. Resilience is forged in the small, invisible decisions. When you choose to show up to the workout after a night of anxiety. When you open your laptop and write one more page after a day of doubt. When you have the difficult conversation instead of disappearing. When you keep your promises to yourself even when no one else is watching. These moments don't look impressive from the outside. No one will post about them. No one will clap for them. But they are the very bricks that build a life no storm can destroy. Every time you choose growth over escape, responsibility over blame, effort over excuse, you are proving to yourself that you will not be owned by pain. And resilience doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means you don't let pain define you. You use it. You mine it. You shape it into something meaningful. Every scar becomes a source of strength. Every setback becomes a teacher. Every mistake becomes a blueprint for how to move forward with more wisdom, more power, more depth. You stop seeing failure as a verdict and start seeing it as a phase. A temporary state, not a permanent identity. You must understand this at the core of your being. You are not fragile. You were never meant to be. You are not here to be protected from discomfort. You are here to transform through it. Your nervous system may protest. Your ego may panic. But your soul, that deeper, stronger part of you, knows this is the work. This is how you become the kind of person who can carry the vision you claim to want. Because if you fold every time you feel resistance, you will never build anything that lasts. There are people in this world who have suffered more than you, lost more than you, been underestimated more deeply than you, and they're still standing. They're still creating. Not because they have something you don't, but because they refuse to stay down. They learned how to hold their center in chaos. They learned how to access calm in crisis. They learned how to stop trying to control life and started mastering their response to it. That's resilience. And you can train it just like strength. Resilience is a decision you make in real time, to keep your heart open when it would be easier to close it. To stay in the room when you'd rather run. To keep walking through the fog when the path is unclear. It's learning to sit with pain without making it personal. It's learning to feel fear and keep going. It's knowing that one hard moment does not cancel your progress. It's not over until you say it's over, and if you don't quit, you are still in the game. This is not theory. This is not abstraction. This is real life. There will be days when the doubt is louder than your belief. When you forget why you started. When the temptation to quit will disguise itself as logic, as reason, as pragmatism. But the truth is, the only way out is through. There is no shortcut around discomfort. There is no alternate route to growth. You either face the fire and let it shape you, or you spend your life running from everything that could have made you extraordinary. The most powerful version of you does not emerge through ease. It is born in the hard seasons. In the late nights when you wanted to give up. In the mornings when you rose before your confidence did. In the failures you turned into strategies. In the heartbreak you used to deepen your empathy. In the closed doors that forced you to knock harder. That version of you, the resilient one, is always being forged in the background quietly while everyone else is looking for the exit. This week, when the resistance comes, and it will, don't panic. Don't catastrophize. Don't tell yourself a story of defeat. Just breathe, assess, adjust, and keep moving. You don't need to feel strong to act strong. You don't need to be certain to take another step. Just remind yourself, this is part of it. This is not failure. This is the fire that forges you. And you are not the kind of person who quits. You are the kind who gets back up. Again. And again. And again. Until nothing can keep you down. Chapter 12. Becoming the final hour, the first day. There is a moment, quiet, rare, unannounced, when you realize that everything you've been doing, all the discipline, the struggle, the setbacks, the breakthroughs, the early mornings, the lonely nights, the decisions that no one clapped for, the wins that came later than expected, and the losses that hurt more than they should, were not just about a goal. They were about becoming someone you respect. And once you see that clearly, once you understand that the point was never just the destination but the transformation, everything shifts. You no longer rush through the process, trying to escape the discomfort. You begin to live inside the discomfort. You begin to use it. You begin to own it because now you understand that pain is not the enemy, passivity is. You realize that this life is not a rehearsal. It's not a warm-up. It's not some waiting room where you sit, hoping for clarity, hoping for a sign, hoping for someone to come and save you from your own hesitation. This is it. This hour. This week. This season. This is the time you either become the architect of your future or the echo of your past. No one will hand you the identity you dream of. You must build it moment by moment, through action, through intention, through the ruthless dismantling of everything that no longer aligns with who you're meant to be. And in that process, you begin to see how much you've been carrying that you never needed. The false expectations. The unspoken guilt. The outdated definitions of success. The voices in your head that aren't even yours. You start peeling them away, not to become someone new, but to return to someone real. Someone who lives by principle, not pressure. Someone who makes decisions based on vision, not validation. Someone who looks in the mirror and sees progress. Not perfection, not potential, but evidence that you are doing the work. Becoming is not a result. It is not the final product. It is not something you wake up one day and receive like a reward. It is a daily process of aligning who you are with who you were designed to be. It is not about comparison. It is not about timelines. It is about integrity, the quiet, inner alignment between what you say, what you believe, and what you do. That's the measurement of a powerful life, not how loudly you speak, but how consistently your actions reflect your deepest convictions. You stop chasing noise. You stop proving. You stop explaining. Because now you understand, the real work is internal. The real proof is in your presence. And when you carry yourself with that level of grounded certainty, people feel it. They may not understand it. They may not agree with it. But they feel it. Because it's rare. Because it's real. Because it's what the world is starving for, someone who knows who they are, where they're going, and why they will not be stopped. This is when you stop being impressed by chaos. You stop chasing intensity and begin pursuing depth. You trade adrenaline for sustainability. You stop starting over every Monday with guilt and desperation and begin building forward with clarity. You begin your week with eyes locked on purpose, spine straight with conviction, and breath calm with gratitude. Not because the week will be easy, but because you will not be moved by difficulty anymore. You're not trying to feel like it. You're not waiting to be excited. You're not addicted to motivation anymore. You've graduated from all of that. Now you're moved by something deeper, your word, your commitment, your values. The quiet decision you made with yourself in the dark, that no one else heard, but that you've been honoring every single day since. That is what makes you powerful. That is what makes you dangerous to mediocrity. You see, there's a cost to becoming. You will lose people. You will lose versions of yourself. You will lose the comfort of being understood. But what you gain is worth all of it. You gain respect for yourself. You gain clarity in a world that thrives on confusion. You gain control, not over everything, but over yourself, which is the only control that ever truly mattered. And perhaps most importantly, you gain peace. Not because everything outside is quiet, but because everything inside is. Because now, there is no conflict between your dreams and your actions. No contradiction between your values and your calendar. No war between the life you want and the one you're living. that alignment, that inner congruence? That is the reward. That is what all the hard work was for, not just success, but wholeness. So as you begin this week, don't start with urgency. Start with intention. Don't start with a checklist. Start with conviction. You are not here to grind. You are not here to perform. You are not here to chase a version of yourself built by comparison. You are here to build something real. A mind that works under pressure. A body that can carry the mission. A soul that knows peace even in the fire. That is the real achievement. That is the becoming. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You don't need the stars to align. You need to begin with all that you are, right where you are, holding nothing back, burning away the noise, the excuses, the hesitation, and standing fully in the power of your next decision. This is how you should begin every week, not just with motivation, but with mastery. Not just with vision, but with vow. Not just with excitement, but with fire. Because the truth is, this is not just another Monday. This is the first day of the life you finally decide to own. And you are ready, not because it will be easy, but because you will not stop until it is done.